It didn't start in a back alley. It didn't start with a cartel boss in a jungle hideout. The greatest drug epidemic in modern history began here, in the quiet, sterilized silence of a boardroom. For decades, the name Sackler was associated with philanthropy. Their name was carved into the marble walls of the Met, the Louvre, and Harvard. They were the Medicis of the 20th century. But behind the art galleries and the gala dinners lay a dark secret. A fortune built not on healing, but on a calculated industrial-scale exploitation of human pain. This is not just a story about a pharmaceutical company. This is the story of a family that turned a molecular compound into a weapon of mass destruction, all while smiling for the cameras. Welcome to the story of Purdue Pharma. Welcome to the empire of pain. This is how one dynasty managed to ignite a fire that would burn down the very fabric of American society. To understand the monster, we must understand its creator, Arthur Sackler, a man who revolutionized medical advertising long before OxyContin was even a chemical sketch on a notepad. Arthur understood something that other doctors didn't. He realized that medicine was a product, and like soap, or cars, or cigarettes, it could be sold if you just found the right slogan. He pioneered the strategy of direct marketing to physicians. He didn't just sell pills, he wined and dined the doctors who prescribed them. He turned the medical profession into a sales force. This aggressive playbook made Valium the first $100 million drug. But Arthur's true legacy wasn't Valium. It was the blueprint he left behind for his nephews, Richard and Kathy. Fast forward to the 1990s. Purdue Pharma is a mid-sized player looking for a blockbuster. They had a painkiller called MS-Contin, but its patent was expiring. The cash flow was about to dry up. They needed a replacement. They needed something stronger. They took an old, cheap opioid called oxycodone, cousin to heroin, and wrapped it in a time-release coating. They called it OxyContin. The pitch was simple. Because the drug was released slowly over 12 hours, it supposedly had a lower risk of abuse. This was the Contin system. It was a brilliant theory. It was also a catastrophic lie. But Purdue didn't let the truth get in the way of the launch. They prepared the most expensive pharmaceutical launch in history. They hired an army of sales reps, young, attractive, driven. Their job wasn't to understand pharmacology. Their job was to charm doctors into writing scripts. Thousands of them. The data they used was manipulated. The FDA label was unique. It actually stated the drug might be less addictive. That single sentence on the label was worth billions of dollars. Purdue created a pain scale. You've seen it. The smiley face chart in every hospital room. They pushed the narrative that pain was the fifth vital sign, requiring immediate treatment. Doctors were told that addiction was rare, less than 1%. This statistic was based on a 5-sentence letter to an editor from 1980, not a clinical trial. It was a ghost statistic. But the doctors bought it. Why wouldn't they? They were being flown to luxury resorts in Florida and Arizona for pain management conferences, all on Purdue's dime. The sales reps tracked the doctors' prescribing habits like snipers. They knew exactly who was writing scripts and who wasn't. They targeted the whales, high prescribers in poor areas. In places like West Virginia and Kentucky, mining communities were broken by physical labor. Pain was a way of life. Purdue didn't see patients. They saw an untapped market. The pills started flowing, first for cancer pain, then for back pain, then for wisdom teeth, then for minor injuries. The definition of chronic pain was expanding rapidly. Sales skyrocketed. In year one, OxyContin generated $45 million. By 2000, it was generating over $1 billion annually. The Sacklers were becoming richer than the Rockefellers. Richard Sackler, the mastermind, sent emails urging reps to push harder. The pill must be hammered into every doctor's head. The aggression was relentless. But then, the reports started coming in. Police in rural towns began noticing something strange. Pharmacies were being robbed, not for cash, but for the pills. Teenagers discovered that if you crushed the pill, you broke the time-release mechanism. You could snort it or inject it. You got the full 12-hour dose in one distinct, euphoric hit. It was pure pharmaceutical-grade heroin in a bottle, and it was FDA approved. The addiction rate wasn't less than 1%. It was catastrophic. Purdue knew. Internal documents later revealed they were aware of the abuse early on. Did they recall the drug? Did they issue warnings? No. They blamed the addicts. They called them abusers. They said the product was perfect. The people were flawed. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. They shifted the moral failing from the seller to the buyer. By 2001, the death toll was rising. Emergency rooms were flooding with overdoses. But inside Purdue's headquarters, the champagne was still popping. Sales were up 40%. The Sacklers were insulated. They were in London, in New York, in the Hamptons, far away from the hollers of Kentucky, where an entire generation was beginning to vanish. The first crack in the dam appeared in 2007. Federal prosecutors brought criminal charges. They had evidence of the lies, the manipulated charts, the aggressive marketing. Purdue looked cornered. But the Sacklers hired top-tier lawyers, including Rudy Giuliani. They managed to secure a plea deal that was effectively a parking ticket, a $600 million fine, no jail time. To a normal person, $600 million is ruin. To Purdue, it was just the cost of doing business. It was a few weeks of revenue. They paid the fine, wiped their hands, and kept selling. But by 2010, the pressure was mounting. Purdue decided to reformulate OxyContin. They made the pills harder to crush. They claimed this was a moral decision to stop abuse. In reality, it was a business tactic to extend their patent. But it had a horrific side effect. Addicts, unable to crush the new pills, didn't stop using. They just switched products. They turned to the streets. They turned to heroin. And eventually, they turned to fentanyl. Purdue's solution actually poured gasoline on the fire, igniting the second wave of the crisis. As the bodies piled up, the Sacklers saw the writing on the wall. They knew the lawsuits were coming back, and this time, they wouldn't be settled for mere millions. So they began the Great Siphon. From 2008 to 2017, the family systematically withdrew over $10 billion from the company. They drained the ship before it sank, They moved the money into offshore trusts, shell companies, and personal accounts. By the time the states came looking for restitution, Purdue's coffers were surprisingly light. In 2019, Purdue Pharma finally filed for bankruptcy. But this wasn't a surrender. It was a strategic legal maneuver designed to protect the family's personal wealth from litigation. It's a trick called the Texas two-step. You split the company in two. One entity gets the assets, the other gets the lawsuits. Then you bankrupt the one with the lawsuits. The victims were furious. Mothers who lost sons, children who lost parents. They wanted to see the Sacklers in handcuffs. Instead, they got a Zoom call. During the bankruptcy hearings, members of the Sackler family had to listen to victim impact statements. For hours, they heard the screams of the people they destroyed. Richard Sackler sat there, stone-faced. When asked if he felt any responsibility for the epidemic, he simply said, "No." He blamed the addicts to the very end. The final settlement was a deal with the devil. The Sacklers agreed to pay roughly $6 billion over several years. In exchange, they demanded permanent civil immunity. This meant no future lawsuits. No one could ever touch them again. They were buying their freedom. And the craziest part, they would still be billionaires after paying it. The only real punishment they faced was social exile. The Louvre taped over their name. The Met took down the plaques. Tufts University stripped their name from the medical school. They became social pariahs. They can't show their faces at the galas anymore. But is that justice? Is being uninvited from a party equal to 500,000 deaths? Let's put this in perspective. If you sell an ounce of heroin on a street corner, you go to prison for 10 years. If you sell $1 billion of oxycodone, you retire to a yacht. The story of Purdue Pharma is the ultimate indictment of modern capitalism. It proves that if the crime is big enough and the profit is high enough, the law does not apply. The opioid crisis has cost the US economy over $2.5 trillion. It has lowered the life expectancy of the American male. It has orphaned an entire generation of children. And the Sacklers, they are currently sitting in their mansions, perhaps watching this very video, protected by an army of lawyers and a wall of money. They won in every measurable way that matters to a capitalist. They won. They kept the money. They kept their freedom. They just had to sacrifice their reputation, a small price for generational wealth. But the Sacklers didn't just leave behind a bank account. They left behind a vacuum. When the bills became harder to get, the market didn't disappear. The customers were still there, desperate and sick. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the drug trade. The Mexican cartels saw the opportunity Purdue created. They flooded the gap with fentanyl. Cheaper, stronger, deadlier. In a twisted irony, the corporate dealers in Connecticut were replaced by the violent cartels of Sinaloa. Purdue groomed the market, and the underworld simply harvested it. The transition was seamless. The addiction pathways carved by OxyContin were the superhighways used by fentanyl. The Sacklers built the road. They just aren't driving the trucks anymore. The damage goes beyond the death toll. They shattered the implicit trust between patient and doctor. For a century, we believed the man in the white coat was there to save us. Now, we know the truth. In the modern medical industrial complex, a patient is not a human being to be healed. A patient is a recurring revenue stream to be optimized. Arthur Sackler was right about one thing. Medicine is a business, but it is a business where the customer has no choice, and the shareholders have no conscience. The empire of pain has legally dissolved, but the ghosts remain. They walk the streets of Kensington, the hollows of West Virginia, and the suburbs of Ohio. The settlement is signed. The wire transfers are complete. The dynasty is secure. And somewhere in America, right now, another pill is being crushed.